Before we dive into the class, let's see what you will need. And please make sure to have the following. You will need a bunch of watercolor pencils, a ruler, an ink pen, a thin brush. By drawing, it is possible to reflect on a situation you were in during the day, analyze it, and maybe change your behaviors in the future. So imagine you were outside in your city and you had an experience, maybe a good one with different kinds of events, and now you are at home. You can take a step back and simply take a moment to try to tell a story about it. What I usually do when I want to draw a story about my day is that I write about it. I write what I thought, what I did, what I felt, and everything I noticed. Here I'm explaining a situation in a coffee, and I can see myself in my environment. So in this way I can observe how I feel, how I react to the events, and how I behave. So now let's see how we can start a comic strip. Firstly, you need a content or a source of inspiration. And as we saw previously, you can use events that happened in your life. So let's continue with this idea. At the beginning, start to write something. Your feelings, perceptions, and observation. Of course, at the beginning, you don't have the complete story in your mind, but you might have experienced a feeling that you want to use as a starting point. I want to talk to those girls. Or the third step, when you have something to play with, and it can be a few sketches or the beginning of a story, like here, you should find a way to develop the idea and find an end to the story. If you want to create an interaction, it's interesting to think about what people want and need. For example, the guy wants to speak to the girl, and the girl just wants to have fun. So the guy first needs to make them laugh, and he just has to say something silly. For example, hey, that's amazing, we take the same train, I'm a little bit like you. And the girls. And now let's have a look at the vocabulary of the comic strip. And I will show you also other examples. So let's begin with the panels. And these are the rectangles on which you will draw your images. You should then decide on the size of your panels. As you can see on that example of the illustrator Tardy, you can extend them in all directions. Have you heard about the father of the comic strip? And he is called Rudolf Topfer. He was born in Geneva, in Switzerland, and that is to say, he is the first to tell a story with vignettes. In his stories, he just adds the text under the images. This is a very simple way to tell a story, but very efficient. You can also simply draw a comic strip without text, and it's more like the atmosphere of somewhere. So in the next video, we will talk about the type of shots. So let's have a look at different types of shots. So firstly, you have the long shot, when you see a person from afar. And then you have the full shot, when you see a person in their entirety. Second recommendation, add fun and humor into your drawing, into your story. So, for example, if you tell something about you going to a shop and buy an apple and then go back home, that's not very interesting. And if you tell something about an angel doing something good, it's not so fun too. But if you think about the devil trying to do something good, it can be interesting because the idea is original. Thirdly, try to evoke an emotion from the reader. Surprise him and try to make your story attractive. Try to draw your story so we want to know what is next. We want to read more. It's even possible to tell a story in 4 panels. So in this example, you have a very clear situation explained from the first square. Friends are cooking, but then somebody complains, so there is a problem. But the friends will help, so the problem is solved. One advantage of the comic strip is that you can create ellipses. It's when you leave out something superfluous and make your story shorter. You create a gap between sequences, but we still can understand the story perfectly. Now imagine your work is publicized and it will appear in a newspaper or a magazine. Sometimes it is hard to open up to others about what you produce. See how you feel by showing your work, and consider what would you like to share to the community and the readers. And think about the readers. Are they teenagers or adults, and which emotions would you like to invoke from them? Would you like to make them laugh? Would you like to make them feel happy, joyful? Or maybe you want to make them feel uncomfortable? Do you want to trigger their anger? Or maybe you want to make them feel released? Here is how I add the ink on the first panels. I feel more at ease adding my ink since the third drawing. Then I can reach a kind of state flow. Even if my sketch is raw, it gives me a base that I can work from. As I add the ink, I improve the sketch by drawing the shapes more clearly and with more details. I can change the posture a bit too. I always refer to what is written in the paragraph to get all the details. Feel free to switch the medium drawings, test the other brushes as well, for example the round chalk. As we saw previously, select an area and then draw with the chalk inside. The round chalk will give textures, so the style will be more raw.